Good evening, everybody. I hope you guys are all doing well. You guys enjoyed your weekend. We're going to go ahead and start with Chapter 8 lecture. Hopefully you guys will be able to see my screen as I go along with the Chapter 8 PowerPoint slides. Okay, so Chapter 8 is Office Equipment and Supplies. This is going to be a very easy lecture. You probably don't even need the slides, but I like for you guys to have these. So starting off with just some introduction to office equipment and supplies. There's different types of administrative equipment in order for you guys to functionally and efficiently do your job as medical assistant administrators. You are going to learn to know how to evaluate, purchase, even lease sometimes. Of course, how to operate and maintain the different essential equipment, such as computers, copiers, scanners, fax machines. We call them all-in-ones when they can do all three on one machine. But most importantly, computers are the most important, obviously, because we use that to store data. It has all of our software for billing, electronic medical records, statements, appointment scheduling, all of that stuff. Different types of computers we have are desktops, which sit on a desktop. So you have the tower and the screen, and of course the keyboard and the mouse. Nowadays, the tower is built inside of the screen, so they called them all-in-ones, and they're built to take up less space. They're built to have less space. You don't have that big, huge tower underneath your desk or on top of your desk. So the tower or the PC is inside of the screen monitor. And so you have more room on your desktop. You can also use laptops. Notebooks are very similar to laptops. And then we have, of course, the tablets like the iPads and the Samsung tablets as well. There's other type of tablets we'll get into for medical or I should say healthcare purposes, but we'll get into those a little bit later. They're kind of actually similar to the personal digital assistant. These are kind of like your Kindles, your Kindles, the Amazon Kindles, where they aren't necessarily to be used like a computer. They just store data for you. You can upload information that you use on a regular to this device, such as a personal digital assistant, and it will have that basically at your fingertips. Of course, nowadays our cell phones are smartphones, and they basically act as computers, handheld computers, if you will. But most offices, I should say all offices, still use what we call landlines, which is the regular telephone. The only difference is most of them don't run on telephone lines anymore. They run on digital telephone lines where you have a computerized or automated telephone, and it runs off of a DSL line, but we still call those landlines, okay? And then, of course, having internet access on any of these devices so that we can search things, look up things through web addresses or through a URL if there's anything that we need to look up, okay? Components of a computer are very simple. The physical components, we usually call this the hardware. This would be your keyboard, your mouse. Pointing devices would be like with a tablet, you have a Apple Pen or a stylus of some sort. Other pointing devices are your mouse, where you can point, click and point. You drag it over, click on something, it'll open up another window or it'll move things over. And then, of course, we have the touch pads that are very similar to mouses, but they are built within the keyboard. And then, of course, a lot of these devices now are touchscreen, very similar to a tablet where you just touch the screen, or very similar to a smartphone where if you touch the screen, it will do the same thing as if you were using a mouse. Modems are what we use to transfer data. Okay, it's the live wires, if you will. So we have cable and or fax modems, And then we have the DSL, which is the digital subscriber line. And again, a lot of the telephones are now running off of DSLs, and so do the computers. And basically what it allows is to transfer data quicker. For telephones, it's being able to hold certain types of information like your voicemail, saving messages, recording the date and time someone called, and then of course having multiple lines, and then just the service of the telephone call, the quality of the call as far as being able to hear more clear, transfer quicker, that type of thing. Okay, we'll get into a little bit about the all-in-ones, but some other components of the computer is going to be a scanner. These are input devices, meaning that you are putting stuff into the computer. So a keyboard is going to allow you to enter things into computer. Pointing devices are going to allow you to click and drag things. Modems is how we transfer the data. Scanners, we scan the document and it enters it into or inputs it into the device or the computer. Okay. Processing devices are your motherboards, basically what is your main circuit board. It controls all the other components of your computer or laptop or whatever device that you're using. You will see on most of these computers, if it's a, now I think it's up to, I want to say a 13 processor, IPU. So that moves pretty quick, and that's just, again, accessing all the data within the device, how quickly it'll bring it up for you, how quickly you can switch from one window to the next, that type of thing. Central processing units, those are your microprocessor. It's basically the primary computer chip responsible for making sure that it can interpret and execute programs. So when you download programs to your device, this allows you to access that information. So main thing you need to know is that it interprets and executes the programs that are uploaded to the device. It is the most important piece of the computer, because without the CPU, the programs won't run, because it's gotta basically be uploaded to somewhere, and this is what we call the CPU. This tower is the CPU. So without a CPU, you won't be able to access any of the programs. So it's the most important part of the hardware system in your devices. Storage devices is how we save the data, and that's based on memory. And we have two different types of memory. We have RAM and ROM. RAM is random access memory, and basically this is temporary, or it's programmable, such as we can remove it from the device and basically transfer it to another device. So an example of this would be like a jump drive, a USB, something like that. This is basically just to read only. It's to transfer information. Whereas ROM, or excuse me, it's not read only, I'm sorry, it's just transferring data and being able to see what memory is being stored, where the ROM is the read-only memory, and this is permanent memory. The computer can read it, but you can't make any changes to it. So an example of a ROM would be your Windows 10. You can't make any changes to the Windows 10 memory, but you can access all of the systems within Windows 10, such as, if you have Microsoft on there, or you can, utilize the notepad, the calculator, all the different types of apps that are within the Windows 10, being able to open up documents, save documents, that type of thing. Okay. So you need to remember the two types of memories, ROM and RAM. ROM, read-only memory, random access memory is your RAM. Removable drives are going to be your CD-ROMs, your burners, again, jump drives, USBs. We used to use even DVDs could store memory, just depending on what you were storing. Zip drives are more popular now because we use those when we're sending documents that are confidential, and we need to send them quickly, so we send them in a zip drive, and typically you have to have an it's called an encrypted file. It's usually when it's a larger file, has a lot of documents in it. So you keep it in the one folder instead of having multiple high memory documents and it taking up the memory on your device, which causes it to move slower if you're using up all the memory. So we use these encrypted folders or zip drives to allow us to access multiple folders or files, if you will. Okay. Sometimes we'll send zip drives, we'll send images as zip drives because images use more memory to open them up and to store them. Other output devices are your monitor. Most of them now are LCD display and have a high resolution, so we can see very clearly what we're looking at on the screen. It allows us to see, the images, allows us to see the text, that type of thing. Different types of printers that are used are your laser and inkjet. Your laser printers are high resolution printers. They are similar to a photocopy. So these are your faster type of printers. They are going to give you the highest quality output. And these are the most common now in all of the offices, and not just medical offices, but most businesses now will use the laser. Whereas inkjet printers are basically your non-impact printers. They basically form characters using a bunch of dots to create tiny drops of ink. And so inkjets is going to use actual ink, where laser kind of just burns into the paper. Okay. This is a picture or an example of what we call a all-in-one. Trying to stretch this out for you so you can see it a little bit better. This basically will copy, print, scan, fax, and even email. We use these types in the office, one, for less space. And two, it's instead of having 4 different types of pieces of equipment, we have just the one. It has its own little designated spot in the office, and everybody is set up to be able to scan to it. It scans directly to your email, and then of course it has a DSL fax modem, as well as having the scanner modem as well, so you can scan, print, copy, and fax. So these are really nice to have in the clinic. Programs that to use with your computer is called software. These basically are a set of instructions that can tell the computer what to do. This is known as your software. It's divided into 2 categories: operating system and application software. So operating systems would be, again, your Microsoft Windows. There's, depending on what device that you use, if it's an Apple product, then it's not called Microsoft Word or Outlook or PowerPoint or Excel. And on Apple products, it's called your Notes or your Pages, is like similar to Word. Keynote is similar to PowerPoint, and then Numbers is similar to Excel. So depending on what device manufacturer you're using, I should say, it's different depending on which one you're using. Okay. Windows are basically just where all of your icons are, and then of course your collection of all your records that are stored. We call that the database. Basically, you'll have a screen that's open to enter information in the patient's database through the electronic medical records. But you have to have a word processor in order to read the text, depending on how that file is being sent to you. So it's very helpful. You can't operate a computer without Windows because, again, it helps you to take it from an HTML function to a text function. So it basically just stores the information for you and then allows you to view it on screen. Okay. Your icons are basically just your symbols that tell you where your different softwares are at. They're just graphic symbols. We call these GUIs. It's not GUI. It's actually called GUI, is an interface that allows us to see the graphic symbols. So this would be an example of a GUI or an icon. These are little icons up here. And if we click on them, then it takes us to other links to that system. So that's what we call GUI interface, okay? You have your applications also that are different types of software. These are, again, your Microsoft Office. This would be your PowerPoint, Excel. You could also use desktop publishing, any type of medical software applications that you're using, like your PDRs. There's a application version for PDR. There's an application version for, it's called Metasoft. These are different types of specifically designed software to help you access information for your medical practice. Optical character recognition, or OCRs, are basically just taking your images and converting them to text. So an example of that would be, let's see if I can bring one up for you. It's pretty cool because you can have an image, like your textbook is just a picture of the text, right? And you scan it across the paper, just like right here. You scan it across the paper, and then it takes that text, and when you upload it to the system, it'll actually upload it like a document, like a Word document. So it'll actually take that image and turn it into actual text. So then you can go in and edit the text to change the format. You can change the font, different things like that. So OCRs are pretty cool. Not to say that they're used in the clinics as often. I personally can't say that I've seen one or used one, but I have heard that they've been used, and they're very helpful in the clinics. I'm more used to seeing the Dragon machines, which are the recording devices where you speak into them and then they'll turn the voice recognition into text. A lot of physicians still use that. When you're using application software, you can complete tasks on a faster level, more accurately, and it just makes it a little bit easier than if you were using a manual system. But learning how to use the software correctly is obviously key to getting the most out of your computer system. So reading the manual is very important. Understanding how to access the word processing, your database management, any accounting and billing through your software, appointment scheduling, again, your electronic transactions, how to email, how many people get set up with an email, internet access, that type of thing. So using your application software is very important to know how to access this information, whether or not a password needs to be created in order to utilize it, level of security, does everybody need access to it, or a certain amount of people? If you don't schedule, then you don't need access to it, that type of thing. Okay. When it comes to training for software, most of the applications, the manufacturers of the applications will offer classes. You can go online. There's YouTube classes you can take too. But let me give you an example. I am a photographer, and I use Adobe. And Adobe now has their cloud version. It's called Adobe Cloud. And I can go on there and I can access all the other smaller softwares like Lightroom, Photoshop, Publisher, I can, Movie Maker, all these different types of applications. And then they have tutorials where I can go in and watch the videos. You can also take college classes that will teach you how to use this software as well. As far as the electronic medical records, they usually will provide, and we'll talk about that a little bit later too, but they usually will provide you with a technician or a representative that will give you a small training on how to access the software. And again, we'll get in that a little bit later, because with that comes cost and everything. So, but it's always important to know where your manual's at, read that, and then utilize your technical support, because a lot of these software companies will offer technical support where you can call and contact them, whether it's through email, live chat, or a phone call, and you can get advice from them. Excuse me. And they'll even sometimes can jump on your computer, access your computer virtually, and help you with whatever the issue is. When it comes time to selecting your computer equipment, it could be that you're opening the practice with them and you have to select, or it could be that you're upgrading the office system. So you have to make sure that when you are selecting the software, you need to do some research on what type of software you need, and then check at least 3 different companies before making a decision to find out if it's going to provide all the stuff that you need in order to run your practice efficiently. I would recommend contacting a same type of office as you. So if you're cardiology, contact another cardiologist and get their opinions on different software programs. It's really crucial when you are selecting software to make sure that your computer system meet the requirements in order to run the software. So very important that if you have Apple products, you need to find out if the software is compatible with Apple. Find out if it's compatible with Windows, that type of thing. Because some softwares are specific to Windows applications only. Some are specific to Apple. So you have to make sure to do that research before selecting. You can't just go, oh, this looks great, I like it, and then come to find out it doesn't even work on your computer system. So doing that homework ahead of time really helps. Okay. When you're adding a computer network, this basically just enables you to share the software programs and its files with more than one person in the workplace so that you guys can access the patient's information at one time. So if I was in John Smith's chart, one of you could also be in John Smith's chart, as long as we're making changes and stuff and we click save. As long as we both click save, it will save that information into his chart or her chart, depending on what you're trying to put in there. The only thing that is difficult with that is if we're both scheduling an appointment in the same time slot, it might not show that you're in there trying to schedule for the 10 a.m. appointment on Tuesday, because until you click save, it's not going to, the patient's name's not going to show up in that time slot. So that can be a little difficult. So when that happens and a double booking occurs, then you have to one of you has to call your patient and move them if double booking is not allowed. Okay. When discussing virtual private network connections, this is just when you have more than one group or more than one computer system, and you need to link them together. So an example of this would be, I have my desktop at home, but I have my desktop at work, but I also have a laptop that on occasion I will take home and do my work. The VPN, or the virtual private network, will allow me to access my desktop at work through my laptop. So we do that through what's called a virtual private network. So it allows us to access my computers and all my files and system from another device. Local area network is basically when you are in the same building, but you're accessing the same information. So most LAN lines, LAN, not land as in telephone, but LAN, local area network, means that we are working out of the same building. As opposed to wide area network, this is when we are a little further apart but we're connected by telephone lines. Okay, so again, virtual private networks are used when you're trying to connect 2 or more computer systems and accessing the same information. VPNs are used a lot with physicians because they can access their all their folders and files from their original desktop or their original device from anywhere that they're at. Making sure when you are ready to purchase your computer equipment, you want to look for reputable vendors, not only looking at the price, but looking at what they provide as far as training, services, technical support. Get at least 3 cost estimates from 3 vendors. And you want to make sure that when you do purchase, you are purchasing all of this hardware components from the same vendor, so that if you ever need to replace it, you just go back to the same vendor and it's easier to access that way. Okay. Because computers evolve so quickly, it is really impossible to predict the changes that will take place, let alone next year. Forget about in the next 5. You guys know this to be true with the telephones. A telephone comes out, and then the following year, it's a new one. And it's like, why did I just buy a new phone when they're going to come out with a new one? So when this is an issue because of technology advances, you just want to make sure that if there is room for upgrades, or if there's changes in the software, ask the vendor if there are upgrades to the system, can I purchase a cloud-based software so that I can get the recurrent updates? Are the updates free? That type of thing, so that that you can still access these softwares. Some of the advances to technology we use nowadays, and we want to make sure that we have enough space for on our computer systems, is telemedicine. We talked about this before. Right now, with COVID-19 being so rampant, a lot of offices aren't doing in-person visits, so they utilize the telemedicine, which is basically very similar to me doing my lecture through Google Meet, where I can see your face. It's a video visit, basically. It's a video chat, and I can ask you several questions that you can, if you have a rash on your hand or your arm, you can show it, that type of thing. You can share images. You can go back and forth that way. So again, when you are looking into different vendors, you want to make sure that you have these types of upgrades and can utilize these types of things so that you're using your software to its fullest potential. Speak recognition is very similar to what I was mentioning earlier about the Dragon system. That is what the speech recognition technology is. It just allows you to basically interpret words into text right directly into the software program. Obviously, taking care of your equipment is very important, making sure it's in a well-ventilated area so it doesn't get hot and basically burn out, making sure that you have a screensaver on your monitor so the screen doesn't, the image doesn't burn through the screen, replacing your ink and your toner for printers, making sure you're properly inserting and ejecting certain jump drives, CD-ROMs, external drives, that type of thing, because you can corrupt files if you don't remove them properly. Security, when it comes to all of your devices, your software programs, we want to make sure everybody has passwords. If it's an encrypted type software, you definitely need passwords to access them. So making sure that you've set everybody up with their password is really important, username and password. How do we prevent system contamination so that we don't get viruses, or somebody doesn't hack our system, hack into our system and take important documents or important information like credit cards, social security numbers, that type of thing. We use antivirus software that basically just prevents certain types of viruses to come to affect the software and making it difficult for your computer to work the way that it needs to. It can slow down. Basically, the antivirus software responds to who we call spammers, and these are people who abuse emails by sending them in mass emails, hundreds a day, and they don't have your permission to send these. They can send malicious emails and files. You don't know who sent it. You don't know if it's meant to corrupt your system. So it's really important that you have that antivirus, so that you can differentiate spam email from emails that you actually need to receive. Firewalls are just barriers to keep any destructive forces away from your computer. These are basically the security protection. It's kind of like having a bodyguard for your computer. And make sure that certain offensive internet sites aren't allowed to be hacked. Nobody can illegally enter into the computer system. It prevents employees from going on to certain sites that they really shouldn't be going on to. So firewalls are really, really important. And then, of course, computer disaster recovery plan is basically, should the hard drive go down, should something happen, it will recover the data within the CPU, so you don't lose important information. We usually will call a computer system fail that it's crashing. And this just makes all the information on the hard drive unavailable. But if you have a recovery plan in place, you can develop a way to retrieve that information. This is super important when it comes to medical practices because that is patients' health information. So if we don't have a disaster recovery plan, we potentially can lose important patient information. So it allows us to retrieve that information as need be. Other administrative medical equipment are your fax machines. It allows you to receive and send images, text over a telephone line. Always making sure you use a cover sheet with a disclaimer saying that if you receive this fax by accident, please discard of it right away, shred it, get rid of it, and then contact the sender, letting them know you received it on accident. Some of the benefits of faxing or having the technology to fax is you get it right away. Faxes can be received within 20, they can be received within minutes all throughout the day. And so you want to make sure, because fax machines are pretty busy, that there's always enough paper in the fax machine at all times, because I guarantee you're getting probably 2 or 3 faxes a minute throughout the day. Typewriters are not really used as much. Some of you probably don't even know what those are. If you're a little bit older, you do. Keyboards have basically, computer keyboards have basically taken the place of typewriters. We don't use those anymore. I don't know of any place that has a typewriter, but I don't want to say no one uses it, because as soon as I say that, you'll know somebody that does. Photocopiers, just make copies of things, making duplicates of things. And then, of course, there's adding machines and calculators that would be beneficial to your billing team. And then again, your folding and inserting machines, can't say that I've seen them out there, but they basically just trifold your paper for you, making it less work when you need to mail out a mass of information to patients. Postage meters can be used in the office. It basically replaces the use of actual postage stamps that you have to peel off and stick. Postage meters do also seal envelopes for you. Just have to make sure there's water in there to moist it. It does help you to save trips to the post office. You can weigh everything there and print out. It'll just scan right onto the envelope, the amount based on its weight. And because it bases it off its weight, it makes postage cost more accurate, because it's going to tell you exactly how much you're going to need to pay for in order to send out something based on its weight. Because you'll need to know, you will have along with the meter is a scale, and that just shows the weight of whatever you're sending out and what the postage will be required to send that out. Dictation transcription equipment, these are just your dictaphones. They look like little recording devices, kind of like when you were being questioned by, if you've ever been questioned by a reporter or something like that. It's a little tiny tape. It goes right in. They press the record button, and it has a little speaker that you can speak into. Again, Dragon has taken the place of this. All electronic medical records have taken the place of this, but some people still use dictation transcription. So I'm not going to say it's not out there. Check writers. Now we have certain applications where it basically has a template for a check, and you just type everything in and it'll print it out. So the different applications are used to do that now. Paper shredders just allow us to destroy confidential information or documents safely and confidentially, so that nobody else can just open up the crumbled up paper in the trash. The shredder actually rips it up in tiny little pieces and permanently destroys. So make sure before you shred something that you know that you for sure want to shred that, because there's no retrieving that after that's done. So when you do go to have paper shredders in your office, you want to make sure you work with a vendor who is complies with the HIPAA laws, and then you have to have them listed as a covered entity. An entity is somebody that you use to work within your practice or have access to certain things in your practice, such as documents. They have to sign a business association agreement stating that they will keep the patient's information confidential, because they will have access to the patient's documents, because it is patient's documents that we're shredding. Okay, making sure you're just evaluating all your office needs before before purchasing anything. Know who to contact for your suppliers. Find out what the warranties are, and then ask them to prepare you I always ask them for some feedback. You know, can you get in contact with a few of your customers and ask them to give me a review on how the supply or the equipment works for them, and then you know, go to other clinics and ask them for recommendations, ask them who they use for their all-in-one printer, copier, scanner. Who do they use for what, you know, computers do they use? What works best for them? That type of thing. Sometimes it's more cost efficient to lease instead of buy. And this would be more geared towards your all-in-one copier, printer, scanner, fax, email type thing, because sometimes it's cheaper to lease it than it is to purchase it, depending on how often you use it, and if your office is in the process of growing, because you might need something a little bigger later on. So I wouldn't right off the bat purchase something. Sometimes it's better to lease that equipment. And then just make sure you're maintaining your office equipment properly. Know where your manuals are. Make sure you're getting them maintained and service on a regular basis, and find out what the contracts are for that. If you are leasing equipment, you know that they should be covering maintenance and service. It should not be coming out of your pocket. Any troubleshooting that needs to be done, know who to contact. Any backup systems for your telephone. You know, all of your computers, make sure that you're running your computers off of a power surge just in case. If there is a electrical fire, know where your fire extinguishers are, so that you can, you know, put that fire out as quickly as possible, causing the least amount of damage to the equipment as possible. Making sure that you keep an inventory of your equipment is very important. Knowing how many computers you have, how many laptops, how many fax machines, so that you can keep track of that. And then having all the serial numbers and who to contact should anything happen to them, you know who to talk to in the event that you need to do that. Okay. Just making sure who's going to be responsible for organizing your supplies, categorizing them for the most important supplies. Stuff that you use all the time would be considered your vital supplies. Stuff that you use once in a while, but is still kind of important, would be incidental. And then stuff that you rarely use, but you might just need, would be your periodic supplies. But knowing where to store this. Does it need to be off the floor? If it's paper, we don't want it to get wet, so we keep it up on a shelf. So location is very important. Having storage cabinets in the front office so you can easily access this supplies if you need it. Separating administrative supplies from clinical supplies. Obviously, you wouldn't keep supplies for injections or blood draws up at the front office. You would keep those in the back office, and vice versa. You wouldn't keep all the pens and the highlighters and the extra copy paper up in the back. You would keep that up in the front, because that's where you utilize it the most. Okay, so when you are taking supply of your inventory, make sure you have some type of inventory system, so you know exactly how much you have of whatever you have, how often you use it, where you've ordered it from in the past, how much you've ordered in the past, and so that way you're not overspending and being what we call a green spender, and just saving money for the practice. Having inventory ordered on a regular basis. For example, I would order once a month for supplies, and it would always be the second Tuesday of the month. I would have a list up at the front of inventory for the front office, and the same thing in the back. And anytime they needed anything, they would write it on that list, and then they knew to give it to me that second Monday of the month, because they knew first thing Tuesday that I would order. So then I would order off that list, and then I would just make sure that, once it's ordered, we'd have it within a day or two. If we needed something urgently, then obviously I was running out to go get it. You want to try to prevent from ordering ahead of schedule, just because it saves money. But sometimes, again, there might be an emergency where you just need to run out and go get it. And that's where you have to kind of keep track of, okay, how much paper are we going through? I bought a case. It looks like it's lasting us about 6 weeks. But I order every 4 weeks for everything else. I'm going to go ahead and order paper every 4 weeks, but maybe, I will order a case an extra case just so that maybe I don't have to order that every 6 weeks. I can order it every 8 weeks because you'll have a little bit left. So now you're ordering paper every other order, if that makes sense. Okay. Making sure, again, you know who your vendors are, checking competitive prices, make sure you understand what your budget is, make sure you're comparing other vendors for prices, quality, and of course, warranties, stuff like that. And when it comes to competitive pricing versus quality, you want to know as far as, you know, how quickly are you going to get the supplies? Is there a delivering fee? If I order in bulk, is there a free delivering fee? What do they charge for rush orders if I have to have something rushed and need it right away? And then you want to know pricing based on units, because some will come per supply. Some will come, one unit would be a case, a box of something. Another unit might be just one individual vial of whatever medication that you're ordering. So know what the unit pricing is, because that will really get you to, because I would say I only need one container of the Cava wipes, but I would say get me one of the Cava wipes. To them, one is a unit. So then I'm getting a whole case versus just needing one container. So you have to be very specific when you are ordering. Local vendors are obviously a little bit more beneficial than if you were ordering out of state, because it's going to take a little bit longer to receive. But you know, sometimes a local vendor doesn't have what you need, so you might have to order out of state. But just give yourself enough time so that you aren't running out, because you know it's going to take a little bit longer to receive if you're ordering out of the state. Just making sure that you keep your order forms when you're ordering, so that you can cross-reference on the purchase order. So what you ordered versus what you received, and making sure that you're paying for everything that you received. If you didn't receive it, obviously you don't want to pay for it, because you shouldn't be paying for anything that you don't receive. So make sure you get that purchase order. It should always come with your, you know, your order. It should come in the box. And then your requisition basically is, you know, same thing as your order form, because it indicates basically what your formal request was from ordering certain supplies. Other requisitions could be an order from the doctor. So you want to make sure that you know the difference between like a lab requisition versus a supply requisition. But always just make sure you get that purchase order, because that purchase order basically guarantees that authorization for purchasing from the office. Without that purchase order, we could say, you know, no, I didn't approve of that, and then an invoice can be disputed. So you obviously want to make sure that what you ordered is what you received. Okay. Always making sure that you cross-check, you know, on the off the purchase order, again, making sure you received everything. And if you didn't, making sure that you are contacting the vendor to say, hey, I didn't receive this, you know, but I did purchase it. So making sure they send it out to you as quickly as possible. When it comes to disbursements is basically paying the invoice, making sure that you're paying for what you ordered. But again, I wouldn't just pay an invoice because I received one. I would go back to my order form and my purchase order, confirming that what we purchased is what we received. I'm not going to be paying for anything that we didn't receive. So before I dispersed money to a vendor, I would go through my order forms and just cross-reference with my purchase order to make sure that I'm paying for what I received. And if not, then I would dispute it before dispersing a payment to the vendor. Certain mistakes that we can avoid, common mistakes. Solicitors can be dishonest. You have your sales reps that just want to sell because they're trying to reach their quota to get their, you know, to get their compensation, whatever their percentages of it. So be aware of dishonest solicitors. Know when they're just pulling your leg. You can always check your vendors or verify your vendors through the Better Business Bureau, just going onto the site, typing in the vendor's name, and it'll basically give you a list of information on the vendor, whether anybody has reported them as dishonest or you know, not somebody that you want to use. Be careful for the bait and switch tactics. Those are basically where they try to lure you in. They'll tell you, well, you're probably better off using this than that. And all they're trying to do is sell you a bigger machine at more of a cost, but you don't need all of that because you're not going to utilize it. So just be careful of that. Don't get into something that you really don't need. Make sure that you're, again, getting at least 3 quotes from 3 different vendors. I always made it a point to develop a personal rapport with my representatives, just so that if I needed anything, they, you know, they'd take care of you, you know, be friendly with them, obviously professional at all times. And, you know, it's worked to my benefit because I've worked at one clinic and then moved on to another. And that office didn't know of a all-in-one printer, scanner, fax vendor. And, you know, because I built such a good rapport, I had them in my cell phone saved, and I'd call them up and say, hey, you know, I've got this office that's looking for this equipment. Can you help us out? They'd show up, and before you know it, I got them some business. They're helping the clinic. And then, you know, it builds more rapport with the new clinic that I'm working with and stuff. So, and don't be afraid to ask questions. You got to know and understand the equipment that you're using. You got to know and understand the warranty, know and understand return policies. What are the refunds? Is it just exchange, that type of thing? Or are you stuck in it and can't do anything with it? Who's responsible for paying for the toner or the ink if you're leasing a you know, printer, copier, all in one? Make sure that you have asked questions that you need to know, and then of course having a contact so that if questions come up later, you know who to talk to. So that's pretty much it. And like I said, it's pretty straightforward. This is all information you guys probably already knew, but just wanted to drive it home with you guys. And then of course, as usual, if you guys have any questions or concerns, please feel free to contact me. I will be in lab from 6 to 7, but I can get back to you as soon as I'm done. Hopefully you guys are all doing great, and we will talk soon, okay? Have a good night. Bye-bye.